Welcome back to the UnTalk podcast. I am your host, Lamir T. If you're joining us for the first time, we want to thank you and welcome you into this space and invite you to find us as we debut a new episode of our podcast on the 1st and 15th of every month. And you can find us on all places where podcasting is prevalent. And we do have a special guest with us today. I want to take a moment to invite her in and introduce her. We have Meredith Liepelt with us, and I just want to thank you and welcome you to the UnTalk podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk with you today.
To that point, since our listeners may not be familiar with you, can you tell us a little bit about your company, who you are, what you do, why we're even talking in the first place?
Absolutely. I would love to. Thank you for the opportunity. So my name is Meredith Liepelt, and my company is Rising Star Publicity. And my company focuses on people who should be famous. So I love to work with people who are really on a mission out there doing really good work, doing good things in the world, and they just need a bigger platform. They need more people to know about them. And so we do that through a variety of visibility strategies. Media relations is one, but also earned media, owned media, all that kind of stuff. Is how do you get your message out there? How do you put yourself out there in a bigger way? So I work with a lot of coaches and consultants, small business owners, speakers who are out there and they've got a great message to put out there and a way to really affect the world. And I love working with the people who should be famous.
And to that point, let's untalk some of those talking points, because there's a lot of hats that you're talking about that you're wearing, a lot of things that you're moving around. So from the information that I found on you, it looks like you're a wife and a mom.
Yes.
Entrepreneur.
Yes.
Mentor.
Yes.
Coach.
Yes.
Author.
Yes.
And a speaker.
Yes.
So out of all of those, which is the most challenging?
Most challenging, probably mother. Honestly, I've got great kids. There's no doubt they're great kids. But, I think being an active parent and really actually parenting your children is the most challenging, because as much as you just want to say yes to everything, when you need to say no and you have to say no, it's not popular and it makes things tough for a while sometimes. So I think actively parenting and just being there all the time, it's challenging, but it's also rewarding in ways that just other things aren't. So in terms of what's most challenging, I guess that's what kind of popped up to me, is because that's never done. You can never check that off your list. Like, oh, I did my parenting today, and there's just stuff all the time. Like I often say and think, I don't know what's going to be walking through the front door when they come home from school. Like what kind of energy, what kind of mood, what has happened throughout the day. Sometimes they text me from school. My oldest daughter just graduated from high school and my youngest daughter is going to 10th grade. So, we're faced with the whole like going off to college challenges now and all of that. And so I would say motherhood would probably be the most challenging.
It's challenging enough to be a mother, but how do you be a mother knowing that you are a lot more plugged in than dads are? How do you be a mother, but then kind of, I don't want to call it check out, but for lack of a better term, check out into all of your business endeavors? Or do you incorporate your kids in what you do? How do you manage it all?
Some days are better than others. Let's just be honest. But honestly, closing the doors helps, they're here in the house all the time right now. So, it's summertime and pandemic and all that. So having some clear boundaries really does help with all of that. And I've worked from home since they were really little. Babies. So this is not new to me. This whole pandemic thing of having kids in the house is not new to me. But, as they go through different stages, it just sort of changes and they need different things. So I guess for me, having some clear boundaries about when I'm accessible and when I'm not has really helped quite a bit. And it's very funny because every once in a while I'll be on a call with a client or I'm, working on a project and I have my office doors closed and like a note will slide underneath the door. And it says, whatever it is, it's like, can I go get ice cream? Yes, no. And they have like little check boxes for each. And it's actually pretty hilarious. I probably should have kept them throughout the years. But I mean, certainly they do text me and things like that. But, it's just like anything. You have to communicate. You have to communicate with your audience, right? So I help people communicate with their audience, but your audience can also be your kids, your husband. I mean, even like I've got a little dog. She's at my feet right now as we speak because we're doing this podcast and I don't want her scratching at the door asking to come in. So it's communicating and understanding those needs and planning for them as much as you can. And then when the unexpected happens, you roll with the punches and you just do your best.
And we're on the UnTalk podcast with Meredith Liepelt, who is with Rising Star Publicity. And I want to ask you, in terms of the audience and helping with publicity strategies for your clients, is there a one size fits all, or is it tailored based on the business, or is it more so tailored on the person's personality and skill set?
That's totally custom. So certainly there are things that are similar. For example, you need to know what your message is. You need to know what you're saying. So a lot of times I spend quite a bit of time with my clients figuring out what are the messages that you want to put out there. And then coming up with those messages, that's obviously very custom, but the framework is figure out your message, figure out your audience. Where are they? Where do you need to show up? How can you show up? Do you need to show up in writing? Can you show up virtually doing a webinar or a podcast? Can you show up in person? How can you show up in front of that audience? And then you kind of mine for those opportunities, and then you start pitching. You pitch yourself and you make sure that you've got the backup there. Your website looks good. Your website is saying the same things that you are saying verbally, or that you're writing in your pitch. They're saying that you have to offer. You've got some credibility behind you, whether that's you've got just some articles on a blog, or you've been on a couple podcasts, or maybe you've written a book or a booklet, or you have a great white paper, or you've got a free download or a checklist. There's something there that shows that you are credible in this area. That needs to be out there as well. So it's working through the message, the audience, the credibility, the pitch. How do you put that out there? And then have the strategy around what do you do with it, so that when you do get media coverage, you can leverage it. Media coverage in and of itself may or may not get your phone ringing off the hook. Most of the times not. But what it is, it's a cumulative effect. So you're out there with your message and you're doing things consistently so people can see, they can see you, they can see that you're committed to your body of work, that you do have the expertise, that you are bringing value to them. And so when they see that and they see you out there in the media and they go check you out on your website and you do have all these pieces of credibility, it makes it easier for them to say, yes, you're the one that I want to go with for my particular need. So the framework is the same for everyone, but certainly it's custom in how it comes out, because not everyone's going to want to go on television. Not everyone's going to want to write. Not everyone's going to want to be on a podcast, and all that's fine. You pick the right avenues for your personality, for your strengths, and then you align them with where your customers are and where your clients are.
And to that point, would you say, because a lot of what you do is dealing with branding and helping your clients to properly brand themselves and their message. So is the challenge more, or do you spend more time with the branding piece or more time with the visibility piece, or does it just vary?
That's a great question. And it does vary, because sometimes it's the branding piece. You need to get that branding piece down, meaning who are you? What do you stand for? What are your messages? What's the value that you want to present to the world? What can you put out there? How do you bring your personality to your message? All of those things to help elevate that conversation in your field. That's sort of the branding piece. And then once that's clear and that is put together, then we can move on to the, how do you show up? How are you then sharing? Because really what we were talking about before, that's the brand. Then the branding is all the stuff that you do to communicate who you are to people, so that when they think of you, they're thinking of the things that you want them to be thinking about.
And do you find that people or some businesses don't even know what it is that they stand for? Meaning they know what they do and they know the service that they provide. Do you find that there's a struggle when they actually have to think about or articulate what it is that I stand for?
Absolutely. I mean, it's very common, because a lot of times people go into business because they're good at the thing, but they don't stop to think about, why me? Like, what am I doing that makes this different? What is my worldview? What is my personality? What are we bringing to the table that's unique and different? And a lot of times you can have success, and you can have a certain level of success, and then you get to this point and you're like, gosh, I really need to differentiate. I really need to figure out this branding piece. And that's very, very common. So if you've got listeners who are out there thinking, gosh, I've never really thought about that before, that is okay, because you're in very good company, very good company. And your brand does change a little bit over time too. As you morph and you grow, depending on what kind of business you have, your branding might grow and change and morph as well. So it's good to revisit. I mean, the core of what you are is not going to change. If your values are, integrity and trust and those kinds of things, that's not going to change. But maybe how you put it out there might change a little bit. And I also find that a lot of times people feel like they have to be this, quote, professional out there. So that they put on the navy blue suit and the white shirt, and they go out and they say all the right things, but they end up being just the same as everybody else. And that is not how you stand out. How you stand out is by actually going internally and figuring out, who am I? And I'm talking about coaches, consultants, speakers, authors. Who am I, and how do I want to project myself and my personality into my message and how I help other people? So that's the part where you get in, and honestly, sometimes it's those quirks and those things that we were told when we were younger, like sit down and be quiet. But if you're the person that's just out there all the time talking, that's you, and that needs to be out there more. So a lot of times it's just, this branding is unearthing this stuff. Who are you? What comes naturally to you? What do you love? What are you really good at? And then doing those things.
So it's more of a soul searching of the individual who is the extension of the business more than the business being an extension or part of the individual, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and again, it kind of depends. So when you are what you are selling, you're the service provider, you're the coach, the consultant, that kind of thing. That is very true. If you have more of like a brick and mortar location, certainly who you are is going to be represented in the business, absolutely. But the business might have a bit of a different brand than you personally. And so a lot of times what happens is the business will have its own brand, but the owner, the CEO, might have their own brand. And that's more like, I mean, we get kind of lost in the words here, but there's like executive branding, and you can go out there as the executive of the company and write articles and thought leadership pieces, those kinds of things, which obviously reflect on the business, but then the business also reflects on the personal brand of the owner. So there can be two separate brands going, but of course there's going to be a strong similarity between those two things.
And when you're trying to help a client, or when you're helping a client, I'm just assuming that you're going to dive into their business, whether you're looking at their social media outlets, whether you're looking at their website, gathering information about who they are and what they do. And to that point, what are you looking for? Like, what stands out? What is it, something you're like, okay, this is something I need to highlight? How do you even know? Because I'm just going to assume you don't take on just everybody who reaches out to you. What are you looking for to say, okay, this is a good fit, this is a good client, as opposed to someone who may not be a good fit for you?
It really depends on what they're asking for. So sometimes people, they just need help to figure out who am I and how do I put myself out there? And that's more of the personal branding conversation. So if a client comes to me and they say, I'm a coach, I'm just getting started, I've got this website, I'm having trouble finding clients, all those tell me they really need some help to add in their personality into what their message is. Because when you get out of coaching school, you know how to be a good coach. Like, you've got those skills for sure. But what you don't have necessarily is, how do I add my personality into that? And also, how do I actually find clients? How do I actually go from, meeting someone and sounding like a robot, like I am a coach and I do all that kind of stuff. How do you add your personality in there so that you become attractive to people and that kind of thing? So if somebody comes to me with those kinds of questions, I know that they're good for the personal branding piece. If somebody comes to me and they already have that together and they're looking for media coverage, then I would go through and I'd look at their website, I look at their social media, I look at what they're looking to do, I see if they're well positioned for that, because I will not take on a media client unless I feel like they're either ready or just a few small tweaks will help them be ready and be in position for the media to really take them seriously, and we can probably get some traction pretty quickly.
And just untalking it, what you're saying a little bit is, you listen to your clients, you listen for keywords, maybe even key phrases, and based on those things, you're able to figure out where you can place them in terms of your services.
Exactly. And sometimes people will say, I just need some help on figuring out, something relatively small. I've got this speech coming up. I need some help to figure out, like, how do I start it with a bang, right? And they just need something small like that, but they really do need some help with that. I can help people with that as well in a very short, like, one-time session, like a one-off session. So that's not what I do most of the time, but especially for clients who I've worked with in the past, they know, like, I just need some help. I need a thought partner around how do I do this one thing. Then I can help them. Let's just get together for an hour, 90 minutes. We'll tackle this one thing, and then you can be on your way.
And if you're just joining us here on the UnTalk podcast, I want to welcome you in. I'm your host, Lemire T, and we do have Meredith Liepelt with us of Rising Star Publicity, and we're talking about her business and what she does, and ultimately how she can help you as the listener. How important is it when one of your clients gets into the quote unquote spotlight? How important is it for them to shine, or is it just a matter of your personality, whether you need to shine or not? Or does it matter what services that you're providing when you get into that platform, if you kind of own it, as opposed to a person who's just kind of vetted and kind of answers the questions as the questions come?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to get out there and own what you're saying and really truly be the expert. And sometimes people get their heads wrapped around this word expert. You know what I'm talking about? Like, I'm not the expert, or I am an expert, or I can't be the expert, because other people know more than me. And what my thinking on that word expert is that if you're truly an expert, it means you probably know more than the average person. You spent a great deal of your time working in that area, and you are constantly learning. So it doesn't mean there's one expert in your industry and that it's you. It means that you know more than most people. You have spent a fair amount of time learning your craft and practicing your craft, and that you're constantly learning. So to me, that's what an expert is. And people who can embrace this concept of, I'm an expert and I have some wisdom nuggets, for example, I can share with people and it will help them, always coming from this place of bringing value and being of service to others. That's what really helps you to own it and shine, as opposed to just feeling like, oh, I'm just little old me. I'm just trying to do my best. But no, if you're out there and you can own your value and own your expertise, that is one of the things that really does help you to shine out there. And certainly there is, depending on how it is that you put yourself out there, if you go on television there is an element of show in that. You've got to sit up, you've got to look the part, and that may mean I've worked with scientists before, and I say, put on your lab coat, like you bring in your beakers and all your things, like creating the show, on television. That's how you would show up and have a certain amount of energy. And if you show up in writing, you need to show up with energy there and have some interesting thoughts and have it well laid out and be able to showcase your message in that way. So yes, you definitely have to own that you're an expert. You have to own that you bring value, and then you've got to freely and willingly give it to others.
And I think that your business is very unique, not just in what you do, but from a standpoint of the times that we're living in now. Most people who want to be out there, and the out there can vary, they generally want to be front and center, but your business is focused on kind of being in the background to put other people front and center. Where did the whole idea to start this business come about? How have you been able to take such a humble approach to growing a business?
Well, it's interesting. I started this business, gosh, I think we're at 12 years ago now. And it grew out of having another business. I actually made a product. It was a baby product, infant accessories, bibs, burp cloths, blankets, that kind of thing. And I started to have a lot of success, and I was on the radio. I got my products in magazines, and I had a lot of visibility. And there were people around the country, new moms just like me, calling me, finding me online somehow and calling me saying, how did you get your product here? How do you do this? How did you brand yourself in this way? And so my thought was always, if this woman has enough courage to pick up the phone and call me, who's just a complete stranger, and ask me for advice, I'm going to help her, because that's what we do. We have to help each other. So I realized through doing this that really was my passion. I love helping people to go out there and do their thing. So eventually I sold that business and started Rich Life Marketing. And I was helping people with their marketing and really, again, how to put themselves out there. So I was doing all the things. I was speaking, I wrote books, I wrote articles, I was published, I was just writing newsletters. I was really, really out there doing all these things. And what I found was people, they would come to me and they'd say, like, oh, there's Meredith. She's the celebrity. She's the celebrity. And I always thought, that's really hilarious, because I'm going home, I'm baking brownies for the Girl Scout meeting, and I'm piling all the girls in my minivan, and we're going to go do this whole thing, but they're calling me this celebrity. It was just really funny to me. So then I started to think, why are people calling me a celebrity? I need to listen to this. So I realized it was because I was doing all of these things to create visibility for my company. I was speaking, I was writing, I was doing, teleseminars is what we did back in the day. I was doing, all the networking. I was going out, I was meeting people, I was connecting people. So I was started to do video, which when it was, newer back in the day. So I created a program called Raise Your Celebrity Profile. And I taught people what I did, how to write articles, how to come up with content, how to be in service to people, and all of it, how to show up in the media. And my business just grew from there. And people really resonated with that. And eventually people started to come to me to ask me to help them get in the media. How do I get on television? And I really enjoy television. I do print media and blogs and all that kind of stuff too, but I really enjoy television because it is kind of a show, and I have a theater background, performance background, so it kind of scratches that itch for a little bit of show. But you also have to bring the value. How do you share your message in a way that brings value and you show it and things like that? So I started to do more in the PR area, media relations area specifically. And then I rebranded a couple years ago to Rising Star Publicity, because I found that most people who gravitated toward me are speakers, authors, coaches, business owners who want to take their message and go out and do public speaking and write books and things like that. So I just found that it was time for me to rebrand myself and my business and go for all these rising stars. And rising stars, it's a whole spectrum of people who are just starting out. I work with people who are New York Times bestselling authors as well, multiple New York Times bestselling authors. Everyone that I work with feels like they are a rising star. Again, it's on a spectrum, and there are certain clients who would look at other clients of mine and think, wow, if I could be there. But the truth is, everyone has about the same issues. There's just, some are a little bit more complex than others, but everyone kind of struggles, kind of mentally with the same kinds of things. Like, how do I get myself out there? What's next for me? How do I go bigger? How do I serve more? So it's the same conversation. It's just, there are just some small nuances between, all these clients that I am so lucky to work with.
And if you're just joining us here on the UnTalk podcast, I'm your host, Lemire T, and we do have Meredith Liepelt on with us from Rising Star. What would you say is a bigger challenge with a client or potential client reaching their height of where they're trying to go? Is it more of a confidence thing, or is it more of an uncertainty about what could happen, or just the lack of drive?
It's an interesting question. I don't think it's the lack of drive. And a lot of my clients, they are very, very confident. And then some of my clients, it's more of a struggle for them. When you're putting your own ideas out there, you're putting yourself up for scrutiny. And on social media, boy, it can be brutal out there. And so I think most people struggle with that a little bit. Like, I don't want to rock the boat because I don't want to, I don't want people to not like me and all this kind of stuff. So it's a dance of attracting the right people. But when you attract the right people, you are also repelling others, right? So it's sort of this dance, and you have to find your comfort level and just know, like, okay, how am I going to deal with this? If somebody says something just completely out of left field on social media and it doesn't make sense, how are you going to handle that? Do you want to just delete it? Do you want to address it? Do you want to ignore it? It's just kind of coming up with your own strategy. And this, again, like everything else, this morphs and grows over time. So depending on what it is, I mean, I've got some clients who, when they get kind of nasty things said about them, they'll screenshot it on social media and they'll use it as a teaching point, as a talking point, to show kind of like, this is what happens when you go big. This is what happens when you put yourself out there, and it's okay. And we're all going to be okay. It's just a matter of, like, figuring out how do you deal with that. And then I think also coming up with your people who you can go to and talk to, and people who are also in the same game that you are, because when you talk to your friends and they're not necessarily out there, they're not having the same experiences as you or similar experiences as you, it's just hard to relate sometimes. So finding people that you can talk to about how things are going as you put yourself out there, because it's great in many ways, because you do get to serve, you do get to help people. At the same time, there are some negative things that come your way, and you just have to deal with that.
So I want to untalk some of the things that you just touched on. And one is probably an old adage that you have heard before. I want to get your take on it. Is all publicity good publicity?
Is all publicity good publicity? Maybe I would say no to that. When you do get bad publicity, bad PR, that's obviously it doesn't feel good. Can it highlight you? Can it highlight your business? Yeah, it can. I guess to me, to come back with an adage, it's like, everything happens for a reason. Like, a lot of times people will say that. I actually don't believe that. I actually believe that you bring meaning to the things that do happen. So if you do get bad publicity, what's the meaning that you can bring to that? How can you turn that into a positive thing for you? I guess that's what I would say to a client is, let's strategize on A, why did this happen? B, how did this happen? What do we need to learn from this? what can we do with it? How do we help this to not happen again? Like really kind of unpacking the whole situation and making that as positive a thing as possible.
And when you're putting yourself out there, whether you're doing so for a client or you have taught a client how to navigate their way through things, how much is too much? Or is there any such thing when you're posting, when you're doing promotions, when you're trying to engage people about your product or your service? Is there such thing as overkill when it comes to promotion and marketing?
There are people who are out there like doing newsletters and doing emails every day. I don't think people are super receptive to getting emails every single day. So yeah, it's kind of taking a look at how do your people like to be communicated with. So once somebody gives you an email and they're on basically your email list, really coming up with a strategy on how you're going to communicate. And then you just keep following that so people kind of learn to understand like what to expect from you would be good. But in terms of marketing, you're just always marketing. Everything that you do is marketing, whether it is you're calling people just to check in, see how they're doing, whether you're networking. We will be networking again someday. I don't know when, but in-person networking, even customer service and marketing are really hand in hand. How do you take care of your people? Your biggest marketing is to your clients and your customers. So how do you service your clients and customers in a way that gets them to remember you? Or if your engagement is done, how do you get them to continue to think about you for when they need you again? Those kinds of things. So you're just always marketing, but there's a balance between marketing and just bombarding people with information. So writing articles and things like that, you can never do too much of that, but the email stuff, I think you can do too much of that.
And when you've dealt with so many different clients on different spectrums, as you mentioned, those who are, authors on the New York Times bestsellers list to people who are just getting started, what does success look like? Does it vary from person to person? Is it a dollar amount? Is it an exposure amount? What is success maybe to your client, and what is success to you dealing with a client?
That's another great question. And that's a question that I always start with when I work with a client. What does success look for you after this engagement is over? Because I want to know that we're working toward that. And I want to see that we're making progress toward that. And I also want to be able to point out to them, because sometimes when you're doing things, you're doing these incremental things and they feel like baby steps. But when you look back on them, like, a month or two later, you're like, wow, I've really come a long way. But, we as business owners get so busy doing everything. Sometimes you don't really take a moment to really realize how far you've come. So when I know what success looks like to them, I can help guide the coaching and guide their decision-making and guide how they're using their time so that they can realize that goal at the end of our engagement. So it really does vary from client to client what success looks like. So for me, what success looks like is if we get there. So it's up to the client to determine where there is. And sometimes I help them figure out, like, what does that even mean? What does that look like? Is it, you've gotten media coverage? Is it that you've gotten new clients? Is it that you can talk to people about what it is that you do in a way that kind of rolls off the tongue? All those kinds of things, because there are tangible things like all those things. And then there are intangible things like I have the confidence now to request more money. I have the confidence now to say, this is what I charge. I have the confidence now to say, here's my pitch to be in your magazine. So, there's tangible things and then there are intangible things.
And when you spend so much time in a mentorship role, how do you get what you need? Like, who mentors the mentor?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I have mentors and coaches myself, for sure. So, and I work with various people and I have a ton of friends in this industry. So I pay coaches to coach me, but I also have my squad. that we call each other. We mastermind together, we text each other, all that. Everyone has to have that support. So I get it professionally when I pay people, but also just because I think everyone needs to have people in their industry that they can just rely on and call for a gut check.
And what would you say to people who hear what you provide and what you can do, but say within themselves, is it really necessary? Social media is free. I could post stuff myself. I can market it myself. Why would I pay someone? What would you say to someone who has that mindset? Or to your point from earlier, not taking on everyone, does someone who have that mindset, are they already showing that they're not fit, if you will, for what you do?
I do think that people can post for themselves. It's just about knowing what to post, because if you're just starting out and you're a relationship coach and you don't know what to post about, so you're posting, oh, I had this for my lunch, or here's my dog, or just stuff like that. There's a time and place for that, but there has to be a strategy for posting, and there has to be a personality behind it, and there has to be a reason for posts, and you need to do those things. So I do think you can absolutely, and you probably should be doing those things for yourself for a little while, but it's about understanding how to put yourself out there, how to make it actually work for you so that it starts to drive clients your way.
And if you're just joining us here on the UnTalk, I am Lemire T, your host. Thank you for taking the time to join us. You can find us in all places where podcasting is made available. And we're on right now with Meredith Liepelt of Rising Star Publicity. And we're talking about all things publicity in terms of what she does, the branding, the mentoring, the coaching, and the marketing piece. Maybe we'll finish up with this. I'll give you a little bit of time to tell people how they can best find you. And maybe for those listeners who are just joining us, maybe didn't catch the whole podcast, what are some of the things that they would want to reach out to you for? Meaning, if you're looking to do this, or if you want to do this, or need more help with that.
Great question. So yes, you can find me at risingstarpublicity.com. That's the best place to find me. You can email me, Meredith, MEREDITH at risingstarpublicity.com. And we can just have a conversation from there about what you're looking for. But if you are a speaker, an author, a coach, a business owner, and you are finding that you want to have more visibility, you want to have a stronger personal brand, let's talk about how to do that. What is your personal brand? And how do you then put that out there? We can definitely talk about that. If you're a business owner and you know that you've got stuff, exciting things going on in your company, and you would like to be put in the spotlight for some of these things, you're hiring, you're growing, you're winning awards, or you should be winning awards, you just don't know what awards to go for, all that kind of thing. I can help you with that as well. So look me up on risingstarpublicity.com.
And thank you very much for that and for joining us here on the UnTalk podcast. This is Lemire T. And once again, we have Meredith Liepelt on with Rising Star Publicity. Thank you for joining the UnTalk podcast.
Thank you, Lemire T.